Now being the hour of 5 o'clock, we'd call to order the special board meeting of the Vallecito Water District, December 11th, 2019 at 5 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance, and Chris, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Hand on your heart, eyes on the flag, ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please. We have an electronic roll call. We are all present. I need a motion to adopt the agenda for the special meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have a presentation, a sad but happy presentation for a retiree.
Chris, do you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Chris, General Manager?
So today we have an announcement for a retirement. It's Cheryl Minichilli. Cheryl's with us today. And I just want to share a bit of a personal story. So Cheryl's been here almost 16 years. It'll be 16 years in January. So that's pretty incredible. It's a long time. It's her birthday on December 23rd. So that's coming up too, which is kind of cool. But 37 months ago, so 3 years and 1 month ago, I sat in this board chamber and I wasn't even a Vallecitos employee yet. But it was the night that the board considered my contract, so it was a big day to me. But at that same meeting, one of the work groups was up presenting what they do, and it was Cheryl. So she was there up and presenting about what the water operations group did, and I was so impressed with her and how she conducted herself, and I've been continuously impressed with her the whole time. She's one of the warmest, nicest, most caring people. I love her lightness of spirit, and we're certainly going to miss you when you leave. So we're here today to honor Cheryl and for her really great accomplishments. And we do have a little bit of a video that we want to share with you too, and I'm going to turn it over to Chris right now.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. So Cheryl is getting ready to retire, and Alicia's been making an employee spotlight video for the retirement purposes and to share exactly what it is that she does, but we're also doing a water work that we do video. And so Alicia kind of put together a real quick 3-minute video on Cheryl and what she does here at Vallecitos that I'd like to share.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Minichilli. I've worked for Vallecitos Water District now for 16 years. I'm a water systems operator too. The biggest responsibility of water operations is to deliver clean, safe drinking water to the public, and that's what we do on a daily basis, and we're real proud of that. Well, the reason why I wanted to work for Vallecitos Water District, because when I was going to school, the guys all said this was the best district around. I started off my career as a plumber, and then I started going to school. I realized that I wanted to move over into the water industry. To help my career along, I've gotten a wastewater degree through Palomar College and a water degree through Palomar College. I've also got a grade 5 through the State Resources Water Control Board. I don't know another woman that is a D5. Some of the misconceptions about our job, when we do a nitrite sample, there's a 15-minute wait time. If I'm sitting there by the sample point, I'm not just sitting there, I'm actually waiting for my sample to be finished. There's a lot of driving around. Every single week we visit every single tank site. There is a lot of driving around, plus we have samples all throughout the district in the north section and in the south section. Every single week we sample all the 19 tanks. Water quality is the most important. A typical day in water operations starts with getting the coolers together for these samples. We have to disinfect them and make sure everything's clean. A couple of us go different directions to take water samples, and a couple of us go the other way to take water quality samples at the tanks. We do inspections at the tanks, we climb the tanks, we do pump station inspections, pressure station inspections. Our most important is the water quality. Technology has changed so much for us here in water operations that we can do a lot of things by computer. We can open and close valves that are 10 miles away by putting a number into our little computer sitting right here at the desk. We can also do the same thing on the iPads. We can set valves to open and close at certain times of the day or night, so now I don't have to get up in the middle of the night and adjust my flow of my water coming into the system. Now I can set it to come open and it'll open at that time. The computer system has really advanced. One thing I like most about my job is that there's never a dull moment. We do have our routine things that we do every day. We take our samples and we check the pump stations and the tanks and the pressure stations. But then all of a sudden a water main break will happen, or we'll get an alarm. It'll be a low pressure and we know that there's a water main break somewhere. I also like it when the fifth graders come in and we get to show the fifth graders everything that we do. It's really cool to be able to share with them all the information that I know. The most rewarding part of my job is helping the customers when they have a water quality concern. I like to help them solve their problems that they have. I'm really glad I got into the water field. It's been really rewarding, and it's not just about the money, it's about helping out the community. I've enjoyed everything that I've done, and it's really important to take care of the water for the people.
So we do have a gift for Cheryl, so if I'd like to have maybe the entire board come down and take a picture with Cheryl. But first, maybe while the board's working its way down, Cheryl, if there's anything you want to say.
Thank you so much. Yes. Yes.
Great job. Now what are you gonna do,
Thank
for
you.
goodness sake?
Oh, I have a lot going on already.
Congratulations, Cheryl.
Thank you so much.
Cheryl, thank you.
I'm proud to be here. Thank you. Thanks.
I understand Ed's taking over your job.
That's easier than me saying.
Don't tempt me.
That's what Glenn whispered to me about.
Thank you. All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Somebody get this packet. All right, thank you. Thank you. This is just a empty box.
No, it just needs engraving.
That way, come January 1st, we're gonna get together.
Work on that.
So
We will.
before we,
Thank you.
but I want to thank Cheryl's coworkers too. It was really nice to come out and show the support, so
Thank you,
thanks
Cheryl's
to them.
coworkers.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just for the board's information, we have another employee retiring. His last day will be tomorrow. It's Mike Hill. Mike he couldn't make it tonight, but congratulations to Mike. I don't remember how many years he has, but 20-plus years, that kind of time frame. So we're starting to lose people with a lot of experience. So
Yeah.
that's going to be our challenge in the coming years.
And you could tell, we all know Cheryl, but you can tell from the video too, she had tremendous passion for what she did, and she's going to be difficult to replace. So from a board perspective, what's the plan there, Mr. General Manager?
So we've already gone out and recruited, and we've got the replacement. So it's somebody that came from Vista Irrigation District, came and joined us, so we stole from somebody else. And this person, I think he just started Monday. And he actually worked here before as part of the County Water Authority intern program. So we had a little experience into his work ethic before, so it helps make that decision. So person started, huge shoes to fill. Cheryl's just an amazing employee and great spirit. I know you all got a chance to meet her, but the more you get to know her, the more you love her.
Great person. Thank you.
Mr.
All right.
President?
Yes, sir.
This is a great opportunity to invoke the 3-foot rule, which I did at our conference with the valet attendant. I was giving him the money. I said, what are you up to? He said, oh, I'm going to school part-time yet. I said, well, can you consider the water business? And I encourage all of us, if we are within 3 feet of someone, pitch the water business in some way or another, because they're dropping like flies out there. and we need to find some new folks. So there it is.
I was afraid where he was going with the 3-foot.
I had no idea. All right.
No respect.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to public comment, and we have two speakers. Robert Wilmot.
President Martin, if I may, there's one more presentation item. I'm sorry. We have 2 awards to
Oh,
present
yes,
the
you
board.
do, I'm sorry, so
Yeah,
sorry.
we have 2 awards to present. So we recently received 2 awards from the San Marcos Unified School District,
Oh, yeah.
and I have them for the board, and we'd like to take pictures with those too. And what they are for is for recognition for helping construct the future of San Marcos High School, or I'm sorry, San Marcos Unified School District. One is an award from La Costa Meadows, where my wife is a teacher, and the other is from La Mirada Academy, which used to be Alvin Dunn. So the awards are to express the school district's appreciation for Vallecitos' efforts in getting their schools reconstructed. Alvin Dunn campus, which is now La Mirada, is totally redone, and La Costa Meadows, they tore down everything and rebuilt it. So if you get a chance to go by both schools, it's pretty impressive. And I think it's so nice for the school district to reach out and express their appreciation. So there's a couple of employees in particular that I'd like to point out. So on the La Costa Meadows job, 2 of our inspectors started with Mark Atkins. Mark retired, and Lyden Miniter took over. So those 2 did a great job inspecting district facilities to make sure the school district's schools got built. And John Childs was the inspector on the La Mirada Academy. So kudos to them for all their hard work. And Lisa Weitzel, who's in our kind of land development group, she did all the plan reviews and plan checks and all that, and got them through the process so that they could spend their bond money in a timely fashion. So if the board will humor me again, maybe come down and take pictures. If you want to just be the president, that's fine. But I thought it'd be nice to take pictures and send them back to the school district.
I'd like to have the whole board go down, see, as you brought that up tonight, I think that's a good idea for the future.
Do you want to take 2 pictures with 1 each, or 1 picture with both awards? 1 picture, 2 awards? 1 picture with 2 awards. Then we'll forward the picture to the school district to tell them we appreciate their recognition. So I'm going to let you choose who goes.
Are there any representatives?
No, there's
from the
not.
school district?
There's not. So this one was for, this is La Costa Meadows, and that one's for Alvin Dunn, so. I'll get out of the way.
And where was this picture gonna be? Oh, in the file.
I'm sorry.
You can't put it anywhere else, can you, Jim?
Yeah.
Men's bathroom.
Good. That was it?
Yeah, and Lisa is with us tonight. She's in the back if you want to raise your arm and wave, so.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you, we'll look for this sort of opportunity soon.
Yeah. Put in like an escalator or something.
You just can't mail.
Yeah.
Sneak up in behind you.
If I could just ask, do we have someone retiring from inspectors, the inspection soon too? Isn't is Mike Simmons gone, or?
Yeah, I don't think we have any, no, let James cover that. He knows the timing.
So this calendar year, we've had 3 people from inspections retire. Mark Atkins had 30 years, Mike Simmons had 30 years, and Alan Mass had 30 years. So they're all gone, so.
Wow, what a great savings for Vallecitos.
Sorry to lose the history.
It's a lot of history.
All right. I think now we'll move to public comment. Hearing no objections. We have 2. The first member who would like to speak to us is Robert Wilmot. Robert? Right up to there, thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Robert Wilmot, and I own a house and property at 28616 Champaign Boulevard. My topic is the water detachment fees. The Valley Cedars Water District has approved detachment for my property from the district, as they have no facilities to my property. It's the only house across from Welk Resort on that side of Champaign Boulevard. And I've been informed by the district that I will be charged water detachment fees in the amount of almost $2,000, in addition to the $1,000 that I've already paid for administrative expenses. So tonight I'm asking the board to waive those additional fees in light of the following. 2 items quoting from the district's reasons for water detachment fees. If any property detaches from the district, their share of those costs would have to be picked up by the remaining properties. And secondly, if a property detaches, there's no future mechanism to recover the share of those costs that should be borne by the property that stood to benefit. Well, first of all, due to its location, my property is on the wrong side of Interstate 15. Valley Cedars Water District has never installed water services there, and my property has never received any benefits or services from Valley Cedars since the house was built way back in 1982 to the present. I've been on a private well, which is now failing, and the Department of Environment and Health has so declared that as a health emergency. This property, therefore, has not really imposed any cost to or on the district and has received no benefits in all that time. So it seems to me if a property has never received any benefits and cannot receive any benefits in the future, then how can it be right to charge water detachment fees for no loss to the district in this unique situation? So that's why I'm respectfully asking the board members to waive the water detachment fees of almost $2,000 in this particular case. I want to thank you for your time and your consideration of this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. I may tell you, because this is not on the agenda, we can't speak to it tonight.
Right.
However, we're having a meeting on the 18th.
Right.
Already spoken to the general manager, and this will be on the agenda.
Okay, I understand.
So we'll see you on the 18th,
Right.
okay?
Thank you.
Can I ask just a question?
And that's oral communications.
Oh,
We got it
well,
handled.
then maybe I can ask the general manager. Where does he get the water from? Valley Center?
The well.
Well, he has a well right now.
No,
He's
but
on-
his well's gone,
Yeah.
been declared. Will he get it from Valley Center?
That would probably be more appropriate to talk about next week.
Oh,
We
okay.
can give a
Very good, thank
a
you.
bigger picture.
Good for me.
Okay. Mr. Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker, speaking as president of the Twin Oaks Valley Property Owners Association here. A bill has been passed in October and is now law, SB 330. I have 3 copies I'm going to leave with you of the bill. It requires a great deal of preparation in order to timely fulfill all the requirements that this bill and pressures is going to put upon you and every other local district. Some of the issues. One is that it allows 20% greater density for every project that has been approved or will be approved.
Good.
As long as it is covered in some manner by the general plans of the district involved. There are restrictions on capacity fees and extractions. There's also time limits under which you can prepare a comprehensive list of extractions and fees. If you do not meet these, it's gone and passed. Most of these are meant to be closed-door operations, of which the elected officials never see, and is subject to bias, let us say. The 20% makes our already outdated master water plan, even more outdated. And there's implications on mandates. The bill says, well, there will be mandates from the state and there will be costs, but an unelected board commission of mandates is going to decide which costs and expenses for infrastructure are going to be covered by the state. This is undefined as to whether or not it'll be applied at the local level or at the project level. But you have to be prepared. And if you have very short time frames in which to implement any sort of extraction, any sort of planning requirements, you're going to have to staff accordingly and be prepared. For that reason, I have provided you with copies of this legislation, and I would hope you would get something in planning prepared for the time it becomes law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We're going to move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion to these items unless a board member or member of the public requests a particular item be removed.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I need to recuse myself on consent calendar item 1.8 because I'm one of the project proponents and one of the signatories to the construction agreement.
Okay. So we're going to look at the consent calendar, everything except for 1.8. I need a motion.
Move to approve?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we'll go to 1.8. Need a motion.
Move to approve?
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Noted.
Show me as
Director
abstained.
Phillips abstained from the second.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, now we're moving on to the annual board transition. So as you know, every year, we play change your job, change your seat, this year being no different than others. So I am recommending and nominating Betty Evans as the new president and the vice president to be Mike Sanella. Need a vote? All in favor? Need a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Seems to be unanimous. And with that, I think I just move the gavel over at this point.
I think
We don't have to
so.
change seats, do we?
No, I don't think we
Okay.
do.
There's the gavel.
Well, thank you. The next item on our action is 2.2, which is the committee appointees and representatives. Glenn, did you want to say anything on that at all? I have a little note here with your name by it, so I wondered.
I don't think so.
I've just distributed the appointments as part of this meeting. You'll see there were very few changes. I actually kept it fairly close to status quo. And I'd like to have a... Oh, thank you. So you're trying to tell me... Do you want me to start over? Okay. So I need a motion to approve as
I have a
suggested.
question.
Move to approve?
I'll second that.
I have a question.
Yes.
The ad hoc committees, I don't see those listed here.
The ad hoc committee for the hillside, the desal negotiation committee, and the third one, which is the general plan update, really don't fall under the president's choice to appoint at this. They're already established, and I feel the continuity is important with those. So those will remain the same. And if you notice when the sheet came out, it didn't list those. I thought they were part of it, but since it's not on the sheet, I just assumed we would move forward with those, if that's with approval. Okay.
Thank you.
I had a-
Yes,
And-
Mike.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
Brian.
I forgot, it's not my job.
So,
Not my job.
this is a little unprecedented, and so I don't know exactly how this works, and I've been trying to work with Glenn and Jim on the best way to do this, but I guess I'll just express at this time that I am interested in the Water Authority position, and in accordance to our ordinance number 212, section 1.9C, each elected director who desires shall have an opportunity to hold the position on the Encino Wastewater Authority or the San Diego County Water Authority boards at least once during their 4-year terms. I've been on the board now for, I don't know, 5.5, 6 years, and I haven't had an opportunity to serve on the Water Authority. As you guys all know, the Water Authority plays a big role in our cost of water for our customers, and the desalination plant, and a lot of other things, just about everything we do. And I think each board member should have an opportunity to develop themselves by having the opportunity to serve on the Water Authority, but also I think it's a good learning, but it's also a good succession to have a couple different succession planning tool, to have a couple different board members be provided that opportunity to serve on the Water Authority. So based off of our ordinance, I don't know if that's where to go from here, because it sounds like it's required, but how do we handle this unprecedented request?
I can give you my point of view, but maybe before, I would like Mr. Gilpin to explain what exactly the bylaw is and how it operates.
Well, with respect to the district's ordinance, it potentially conflicts with the Water Authority appointment process. So the appointment to the Water Authority is for a term of 6 years. That's per their rules. And in order to, doesn't mean you can't change it, but in order to change it, we need to go through a process where the current representative would be removed, and then the board would nominate and appoint a new representative. And so in order to do that, we would need to put an agenda item on for the next meeting for consideration of that item, if that's when you want to do it, or whenever you want to do it. So that's how it works. Is that, Mike, you're looking at me kind of?
So where within that 6-year term are we at currently?
My term ends in 2022.
Okay. That's a weird expectation from the Water Authority, considering that we're all elected to 4-year terms. They're making quite the assumption that a board member is going to get reelected in order to fulfill that term. So that seems odd to me up front. But secondly, I think, to kind of throw a hypothetical out there, if President Evans chose not to appoint herself, then how would the Water Authority handle that?
Well, she's already been appointed, so she doesn't need to reappoint herself. She's been appointed to a 6-year term. And in order to deal with this, she would have to be removed from that position by the board and replaced with someone else.
So then why are we voting on that appointment tonight?
May I?
Sure.
I think after having you explain it to me, Mr. Gilpin, it turns out that we don't vote on it each year, that there is a statute by the Water Authority that says when you appoint someone, they complete a 6-year term. That's the anticipation and the expectations. They make no decision regarding will that person survive life or election. They simply feel that that's incredibly important for the continuity and the operations of the Water Authority. So when we removed Dennis Lamb, I finished his 6-year term when I was appointed. 4 years ago, we actually voted as a board, and I believe it was unanimous that I would take the term. Unfortunately, we have a misunderstanding between our bylaws and the term, but I'm technically, anyone who is in the middle of a 6-year term is not voted on again. You're in the position. Now, so I'll just say that.
If I can add, I think our our ordinance needs revisions, it needs some work to clarify certain issues. In reading the ordinance, it doesn't specifically say that at this reorganization meeting, appointments will be made to the Water Authority in Encina. It basically says each director shall have an opportunity, but it doesn't talk about the process to exercise that opportunity. So it's kind of silent. So I think, absent that clarity in here, we refer to, or we look to the Water Authority and say when the current delegate was appointed, it was for 6 years. As General Counsel Gilpin mentions, it doesn't mean it can't be undone, but I think in the future, which doesn't help us tonight, but in the future, we need to clarify in the ordinance what the expectations for committee assignments are. The ordinance is clear that with an incoming president, you're appointing to standing advisory committees, which are the 4 committees that we have. So it doesn't specifically say you're also talking about that, about the Water Authority in Encina. By practice, we have been, ever since I've been here, the 3 years I've been here, we have been kind of lumping them together, the standing committees and our external organization representation. So I don't know if that helps, but.
It's a lot of confusion, and our Vallecito's ordinance, it was also voted on unanimously, and I remember from this discussion, the kind of the spirit of this new policy, if you will, was to give the directors an opportunity, have that succession planning. There's a tremendous amount of development opportunity by serving on a board like the Water Authority. And I think that to have 1 of 5 board members be there now for 6 years and then continue when there's other, I know I'm not the only board member who has an interest in this position. I'm just the only one that's speaking up right now. I just don't, I think that's missing the spirit of the ordinance that we all 5 of us agreed upon not too long ago. So, and we don't have to continue this debate forever, but I'll go down and speak to the Water Authority and maybe speak to their board as well. And I have a few friends on the board down there to really get a better understanding about this, how a 4-year elected official gets appointed to a 6-year term at an agency. I'd like to really get my head around that one.
Yeah, and I would also suggest, I think the ball is in our house to clean up how we want it approached, because as I said, you can change out that position even though they've designated it as a 6-year term, but it does require a process. So
No,
you're not stuck with a person for 6 years, Director Sinelli. If the board's desire is to switch that out, 2 years, 3 years, you can do it. I think the water, I don't know what their thinking is, but.
I gotcha. So then perhaps the best step is to agendize this for the next meeting, have the discussion continue, and then have the board members make a decision if they want to basically honor their previous vote within this ordinance or not, right?
Yeah, and just my 2 cents, I wasn't here when you did the ordinance.
Mm-hmm. Or the desal agreement.
And it's not, and like the desal agreement, it's not a model of clarity. And I think it could stand for some clarification, because it says you will be given an opportunity for a position. That doesn't mean you have to be elected to the position. What did you mean by position? Because it's now come up, because there's, like for Encina, there's 2 positions and an alternate. Well, those are all 3 positions. Is that what, and I'm not arguing, I'm just pointing out the ambiguities in this thing. And then it says, it doesn't say or, it says and. Either or, that may be something you want to consider. Yeah. And then, from a policy standpoint, do you want people on those 2 boards for a longer period? Do you want people to be given an opportunity? How do you want that sequencing to work? So.
Yeah, and I think it's a balance. I certainly can appreciate that we don't want to turn it over every single year, maybe not even every 2 years, but and that's something that we can address longer term. But in this particular case, I think it's been 6 some odd years. I think we've met our obligation of consistency to the Water Authority for our representation down there. And at some point, I don't think these are life terms for any of these positions. So.
I would add that the Water Authority clearly anticipated that there may be changes from the local agencies. Somebody may not get reelected, somebody may, leave their seat. So they acknowledge that. But if none of those things happen, they set this 6-year window that absent any changes, it stays that. So as General Counsel said, we'd have to take an affirmative action to change the appointment.
Okay.
Okay.
And so I guess the suggestion is if you want to do that, there's no approval on that item tonight, and you would schedule it for the next meeting, and we can properly agendize it
Okay.
for consideration of that position and how to handle it.
Okay, I would like to say two things. First of all, I did take time for input from each of you and really tried to be as conscientious in my decisions that would be the best overall for the entire district. It may not be perfect for any one individual, but I tried. And interestingly, Mike, you never mentioned the Water Authority to me. You specifically mentioned EWA, and you mentioned the ordinance. And I did look at the ordinance, and I asked, and there are 3 positions, and I've placed you on the position. Our bylaw does not say that anyone is guaranteed a particular position. And in my belief, I feel that had Hal 2 years of experience under him, or if Craig were still on there, I think it would have been very justifiable to remove Jim. But with Hal as a 1-year member, and I think the history, the continuity, the decisions coming forward it's very valuable to have Jim on there. So I feel like I tried to answer the obligations of the ordinance by giving you that position. I find it a bit unfair to the entire board at this last minute to come forward. You've never said a word to me until now about this position, and I think that that is detrimental in itself. Do I agree with, we need to go back and look at the policy? I agree. Now, we have a motion on the floor, would like to call for the question.
Well, I have a point of clarification on the motion.
Okay.
I got mixed messages from staff. Are we not voting on EWA and County Water Authority as part of this motion, or are we?
Well, I believe we are. I think
Now we are.
the slate of candidates, the slate of candidates that was put forward by President Evans included those assignments. So I think that's the motion. And I'll look to the attorney on this one.
Well, and I apologize, I did not hear the motion. Has there been a motion to approve the slate?
Yes.
Is that your motion,
I
Director
second the
Elitharp?
motion. I believe it was.
So
Director.
then,
There was a motion and a second.
so then if that is.
Could you read the motion back, Diane?
It was on full swing.
Well, I can't.
Jim, would you mind repeating your motion?
I believe the motion was to approve the selected candidates that were delivered on our sheet.
The second.
And I'll make if it does include those 2 positions, I'd like to, what is it, a supplemental?
Substitute motion.
Motion, that we do move forward in approving all of the other recommendations with the exception of the County Water Authority, and bring this back for further board consideration at the next meeting.
Does substitute,
He needs a second. Did Director Martin second?
I didn't hear it.
I can second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Okay,
there's
we have
a
a
second.
It's worth a discussion.
okay. Would you all who would like to discuss the motion, or should we just go for a vote?
Call for the vote.
Call for the question then, all right. So we have a motion in front of us that we remove the
The County Water
position of the San Diego County Water Authority from the vote tonight.
Clarification.
Clarification, yes.
Yes. Did the motion include bringing it back next? Okay, very good.
At the next meeting.
But is that, I don't mean to interject myself in this, is 1 week enough? Does that help? I'm not sure what's going to happen between now and then, other than it'll be agendized again. Director Snelly, you talked about meeting with the Water Authority.
Yeah, I mean,
Does that give you enough time?
Yeah, I would like, I have enough, I know enough people that serve on the board there that I can get at least some clarification around the 6-year component and a little bit more about kind of what's customary down there as far as how other districts handle their board representation. And But again, and ultimately, you know, it's going to come down to the majority of the board.
Okay, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Whoops, sorry.
Could we clarify, are we voting on the substitute or on the original?
You're voting on the substitute motion, which I'll paraphrase. I think it's approval of the slate with the exception of the San Diego County Water Authority position, which has been requested to be brought back for consideration at the next meeting on the 18th.
On the 18th.
Correct.
Yeah. To finally put it to bed.
Thank you.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Me? And it passes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So, next item is the acceptance of our comprehensive annual financial report, and I believe that will be directed by you, Wes, is that correct?
Yeah, Wes will take that item along with our auditor, so,
And the auditors, Davis Farr.
yes. Yeah, could you please?
Have we done the, I might have missed it, did we do the reseating of the positions?
Yes.
So that he's now president?
Vice President.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Good evening, President Evans, members of the board. Tonight, we're going to talk about the comprehensive annual financial report. And to get started, the auditors from Davis and Farr are here. And Shannon Ayala, one of the partners, is going to give a brief presentation, and then I'll talk about the financial statements when she's. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's not up there. Do I just go? Hi, I'm Shannon Ayala, partner with Davis Farr. We completed the audit. I don't know why it's not coming up. Thank you. We completed the annual financial statement audit for the comprehensive annual financial report. We issued our audit opinion dated December 3rd, 2019. That audit opinion has an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of opinion you can receive on the financial statements. Indicates that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects with generally accepted accounting principles. We also issued a communication to those in governance letter and a government auditing standards letter. The audit results are the finance staff was very prepared for the audit. We appreciate all the help they provide in helping us get our work done and providing the documentation to our requests and answers to our hundreds of questions. We noted no material weaknesses in internal controls. And we did have one internal control recommendation to enhance controls over vendor management. I believe this was a repeat comment from last year, so it will stay on there until there's some implementation of new controls. We had no material instances of non-compliance with laws or regulations that are directed material to the financial statements. We performed some cash disbursement procedures. We made a random sample selection of 25 payments to determine compliance with the district's purchasing policy. We did not have any exceptions. We also performed an analytical review of expenses, which resulted in some additional testing of unusual variances from the prior year. We also performed a really fun test with our data mining software. It's called the two-digit Benford's Law testing. So typically this test is done on the first digit, but there was an update to the test that you could do using the first two digits of each cash disbursement. So for example, it counts the number of transactions that start with the first two digits of each payment, and it creates this sort of like graph, and anything that falls outside of the top line is considered highly suspicious, or which are the red items, and then the graph with the slanted lines are just suspicious transactions. So we took a look at anything that was considered highly suspicious, and most of those items were just that they were very frequent payments and they were high amounts. So things like payments to Aqua, the Water Authority, construction companies. So we selected 10 of those transactions. We reviewed the invoices to support the payments, and then we also did a Google search for any companies that we were not familiar with, and we did not have any exceptions. Some other procedures that we performed were testing of pension obligations. We also tested the other post-employment benefit, which actually is an asset this year. We also performed some testing of capital asset transactions. So we tested 69% of the current construction in progress, and then we determined the reasonableness of that depreciation expense. And then we tested for proper cutoffs of receivables and payables. There are a couple upcoming auditing standards that will possibly affect the district in the future. So next year we have GASB 84, which may require the district to report trust and custodial funds in the financial statements. So typically enterprise funds only have their 2 financial statements, but with the implementation of this new GASB, if you have a trust, then you will be required to report a statement of fiduciary net position and statement of changes in the fiduciary net position. And then in 2021, GASB 87, which will change the accounting for operating and capital leases. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No, I don't see any. Thank you for a very thorough job. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the finance department and staff for being so helpful and doing such a wonderful job. And we have how many more years with Davis Farr?
This was their second year, so they're under a 3-year contract plus 2 possible 1-year extensions.
So next year we'll be looking at possible renewal. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Is it also possible, I asked this, we just went through this at EWA, and I asked them because they kept telling us how great our staff was and how great all the reports were and how easy it was to do, whether we would be looking at a discount next year. Just a food for thought.
I think it's still contracted for next year as far as the price goes. But
Food for thought.
And just so we know, there is another presentation to give in relation to the audited financial statements. So I'll be giving another short presentation.
Oh.
So we haven't completed the item yet.
Thank you.
You said short.
Yes, I'll keep it as short as possible.
Comprehensive.
Diane, can we get this up on the screen? Okay, so before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the staff in the finance and accounting department. This year, you may have noticed that the report has changed and it looks a lot better, in my opinion, than it did last year. And we've retitled it. Hopefully you all have a copy of the comprehensive annual financial report, the bound copy. There was an extraordinary amount of work done this year by staff to transform the annual audited financial statements to the comprehensive annual financial report. Now, what's the difference, you might ask? Well, hopefully I can answer that question during this presentation. Who asked that?
You might ask,
So-
you might not ask.
And Shannon hopefully mentioned that the financial statements are the responsibility of management. That being said, as usual, staff work diligently recording transactions and preparing the financial statements to ensure that they're complete and accurate. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the comprehensive annual financial report. And first I'll go into the contents. So the normal annual audited financial report consists of the financial section. This is the basic financial statements. And from there, in order to transform that into a comprehensive annual financial report, we had to add an introductory section and a statistical section, and that made the report comprehensive. So now I'll go into detail, and since we've seen the annual audited financial report, I'm going to talk about the financial section first, because that's what we had in the past, and then I'll talk about the 2 sections that have been added to that report. So the financial section consists of the independent auditor's report, which Shannon just discussed, management's discussion and analysis, the financial statements themselves, which consist of the statement of net position, the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, and the statement of cash flows. After the financial statements, you have the notes to the financial statements, followed by the supplementary information. Supplementary information is required information about our PERS and our other post-employment benefits. So I'm going to focus on the MD&A instead of going through the whole report, because that's basically a summary of our financial statements. And as I've said before, it gives us a chance to brag about our accomplishments during the year. So starting on page 17 of your CAFR, CAFR is short for Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. So I'll be saying CAFR a lot tonight, so you know what that is. Starting on page 17, we're looking at the financial highlights. And some things worth mentioning are that water sales decreased by $2 million. This was mostly a result of the unusually wet winter and decrease in demands. Corresponding to that, water purchases decreased by $2.1 million. Unfortunately, water costs still exceed water sales. Other things to note are the capacity fees were $8.9 million during the year, and capital asset acquisitions were $9.1 million. These are consistent with previous years and just shows that construction has been pretty steady over the 2 years. So next we have some financial highlights. This is a summary of page 20 of your CAFR. So I just took the bottom half of page 20. And first you can see the district had an operating loss or operating income in 2019 of $1.6 million. And this was mainly as a result of recovery reimbursements and increase in reclaimed water sales. So we had the Diamond Environmental settlement and we had an increase in reclaimed water sales. Also, the change in net position is $17 million after the $11 million in capital contributions. So continuing the financial highlights, some things worth mentioning are the district paid down $3.4 million in long-term debt without incurring any additional debt. And during the year, we funded the CalPERS unfunded accrued liability. We sent an additional discretionary payment of $834,000 to CalPERS, which should result in an estimated interest savings of $1,267,000. So next, we'll look at, this is on page 19, and I'm going to talk about, next few slides are related to the current to prior year analysis and just some changes from last year to this year. So looking at this, we can see that cash and investments increased by $12.4 million. Capital assets increased by $2 million. Deferred outflows actually decreased by $1.6 million. The reason for this is because we paid our other post-employment benefits. We fully funded that last year, but it wasn't included in the actual evaluation report, so we didn't receive credit for the payment. When you pay something before you get credit for it, they consider that a deferred outflow, which is sort of like an asset. So last year we had credit for that. This year, or we didn't get credit for it last year. This year we have got credit for it, so now it's gone down and deferred outflows have decreased. Hopefully that's clear. Current liabilities increased by $1.5 million. This is mainly the result of invoices received towards the end of the year. One was an increase from Encina, their fourth quarter invoice went up by $500,000. We also got an invoice for the, what was it for? That was for, it was for a construction project that I forgot the name of right now. And I can't see it in my notes over here. Let me see if I can see it. Oh, thank you. Anthony told me the answer to that one before and I forgot it. So it was Rock Springs Sewers. We actually got an invoice towards the end of the year for that.
Did Anthony speak?
I heard him. He said something. Okay, so non-current liabilities went down by $5.9 million. This was mainly as a result of paying off the $3.4 million in debt that I mentioned previously and fully funding the other post-employment benefits. It's no longer a liability, it is now an asset, so it's not in there, so it's gone down by 5.9. And finally, deferred inflows went up by $188,000. This is mainly just actuarial assumptions that are calculated by CalPERS. So the next couple slides are a breakout of page 20 of your CAFR. I just broke it into two sections to make it more presentable. This actually shows the revenues, which is the top half of that table. And some things, well, we can see in the chart here is that our main sources of revenue are water sales at 38%, sewer service charges at 25%, and ready-to-serve charges of 19% of our revenues. Other things worth noting are that property taxes went up from last year to this year by $528,000, mainly as a result of the redevelopment agency receipts. Reclaimed water sales went up by $963,000, as a result of increases in capital recovery costs. And other revenues increased mainly as a result of the things I mentioned before, which is the settlement from Diamond Environmental. We had a desal true-up of $294,000 and Aqua JPIA refunds. So continuing with that, this is the bottom section of page 20, which is the expense section of that table. And some things worth noting on here that G&A went down by $613,000, mainly as a result of decrease in labor costs in G&A. Meadowlark went up by $264,000 as a result of budgeted increases in materials and services and outside services. Engineering went up by $242,000. This was a result of helping out with water main breaks with transmission and distribution. Collections went up by $319,000, mainly as a result of increases in chemical costs and outside services. And transmission and distribution, as I mentioned, they had a lot of water main breaks during the year, so that went up by $899,000. Other expenses went down by $546,000, and this actually was a result of the poly to copper, or was it copper to poly? Poly to copper? Poly to copper conversion. The poly to copper conversion that we completed, so we're no longer spending money on that. So the next page, it's page 21 and 22, talks about some restrictions, commitments, and limitations of the district, such as the district has $56 million in long-term debt outstanding, and we're contracted at least through the design phase for projects such as the Interceptor, Meadowlark Tank Number 3, Mount Bell Pump Station, MRF Biological Selector, and Rock Springs Sewer, which is that project that we had the invoice for that I forgot. So this next page is just some considerations and assumptions we have included in that we talk about in MD&A for next year's budget. They're pretty standard things, such as we hope that the rainfall comes back to normal, so we have an increase in water usage. We are hoping that construction continues to recover, and we always account for changes in regulatory compliance. So,
Do you have a question now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Long-term debt.
yes,
How long-term is the long-term debt?
2035, I believe, on the 2015 refunding.
And the long-term debt is because of?
Oh, that's mainly the Twin Oaks, the plant, and the building. And Encina Phase 5. So we have three different types of debt. We have the 2012 COPS, 2008 private placement loan, and the 2015 refunding. Those are our three debts. The 2015 refunding is the largest one by far at like $46 million. That one we paid off in 2035. One of them, I can't remember, it's 2008, probably 8, is coming due in the next few years, not pretty shortly. But that's what the debt's incurred for. The largest portion of it was for the plant and for this building.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that's the financial section. So that's the annual audited financial report that we've had in the past. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them from there. I'm going to be moving into the other two sections that we've added to make it a comprehensive annual financial report.
Any questions? Yep. Craig?
Yeah, I saw somewhere, and I can't find it now, but there was like a multi-year chart of net position.
Yep. Oh, yeah, and I'll get into that.
You're getting, okay,
Yep.
thanks.
That's actually part of the statistical section, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. So, as I mentioned, the comprehensive annual financial report has three sections to it: the introductory, financial, and statistical section. Each of these sections has strict requirements from the Government Finance Officers Association, what we have to include in there for it to qualify to be a CAFR. So I'm going to go through what those are and discuss how we've put them in our report. So I'm going to start with the introductory section. So the introductory section first has a letter of transmittal. The letter of transmittal gives some background information about the district, when it was formed, so on and so forth, and discusses the type of reporting entity that is. What that entails is basically our budgeting controls, internal controls, accounting procedures, and it also talks about economic conditions and outlook. And finally, it talks about our awards and accomplishments, which next year we hope to include one more award and accomplishment in that, which I'll talk about a little later. So another part of the introductory section that's required is the organization chart. This is all information that readers didn't have in the past and now they do have, so it's providing an improvement in transparency to our readers. So the org chart is part of that. It also lists the principal officials. So it recognizes the board of directors and the district's financial management. And finally, it has a district service area map, so our readers can see our service area. that's the introductory section in a nutshell. If you don't have any questions on that, I'll move on to the next section of the report.
Any questions? No.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about the statistical section. So the statistical section has 5 areas of focus. I'm going to turn my page here just so I get all these. So the 5 areas of focus of the statistical section are the financial trends, and this is illustrated on tables 1 and 2 on pages 64 and 65 of your CAFR. And what this does, and this is what Director Ellithorpe was asking about, is it presents 10 years of information about the net position of the district. So the net position of the district is the accumulated value of the district's assets minus liabilities. And the changes in that position are the total revenues less total expenses. So by showing these over 10 years, we can show the success of operations of the district and its ability to meet financial commitments. So this gives readers a lot more information about what's happened in the past and how we got where we are. The next area is revenue capacity. This is shown on tables 3 through 9, or pages 66 through 71 of your CAFR. And this details information about revenues and expenses broken down by source for the last 10 years. These are all the tables I'm going to talk about are 10 years of information, and you can thank Anthony for putting these all together. The next area is the debt capacity. This is shown on tables 10 and 11 on pages 72 and 73 of your CAFR. And the debt capacity is illustrated by listing our outstanding debt by type and our debt service coverage ratio for the last 10 years. Next, we have the demographic and economic information. This is shown in tables 12 through 14 on pages 74 through 76 of your CAFR. And what this is it's the assessed valuation of the property in the district, population information, and the largest employers. It's all shown for the last 10 years with the exception of largest employers, where we show 2019 and 10 years ago, 2010. Finally, we have the operating information area. This is in tables 15 and 16 on pages 77 and 78, the last 2 pages of your CAFR. The operating information is basically what it is. It's the employees broken out by function or department and the capital assets by type for the last 10 years. By showing these 2 things, the employees by department and capital assets by type, the readers can get an idea of how the financial report relates to the activities that we're performing. So that is the statistical section. Again, in a nutshell, there's a lot of information there. I think you saw it's like 16 pages and I think it's 16 tables and 15 pages and 10 years of information on all those tables. So if you don't have any questions, I'll move on from there about the CAFR process.
I think we can move on.
So just to go a little bit into the CAFR process, the Government Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, has this approximately 79-page checklist that we have to go through for each of these sections. So for each section, they have certain requirements we have to go through and check off that we've included it, so that we've got the complete report. And the reason we do this is not only to improve transparency and provide readers with more information, but in hopes that we can apply for and receive a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting.
And are we going to be doing that?
We've already got the application filled out. We haven't written the check yet, but it's due December 31st.
Okay.
Chairman,
Yes.
do you have a copy of that checklist so we can check it?
Absolutely. I'll be happy to send that to you.
All right, thank
And it's got a push-button checklist, too, in the PDF, so you can check it off as you go through, just to make sure everything's there.
Perfect.
Couldn't be better.
Yeah, it's all digital. Yeah. I used to do it by hand with a pen, but now it's good. So this is an example of the award. So if we submit an application and qualify for the award, next year this could be included as part of our CAFR in the introductory section. We'll have a picture of the award itself that you have to include in there if you've gotten it in the past. The first year is the most difficult year to get that award, so we've got our fingers crossed. So that's all I have for the presentation on the CAFR. With that, staff recommends that the board consider and accept the 2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
And before we go forward, I believe I have a speaker. Mr. Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker, San Marcos, speaking as a private citizen. There was some discussion about 100% payoff of CalPERS, but from what I understand, we actually paid off portions of it. And that was, we had a certain payout for 3 different categories of liability. And they recommend an 80% as being a good coverage for liability. And I'm wondering if that's the case, that we did 100% of 80%, essentially. The reclaimed water sales, I'm rather pleased to see that go up. I think we've been selling water far too cheaply, and to do that in the rainy season seems to have been quite an achievement. I was wondering if we had either gotten a surge in demand or if our rates went up. We have in our long-range planning at some point some new bonds, and there'll be some reimbursements. And I'm wondering how those reimbursements are going to be handled. You passed a resolution to authorizing these reimbursements. As far as the auditing goes, I'm wondering if they inspected and examined capacity fee extractions in depth and to make sure that they are in conformance. I mentioned two that concerned me, Davia Apartments and Woodward Apartments. And I'd like to make sure that those are properly managed and there are internal controls involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunsaker. Would you, staff, care to address any of those? Or Mr. Hunsaker, would you prefer to get back with staff themselves to answer those many questions for you?
No, I prefer to have a legal statement on video.
So I can address at least the first two,
Okay.
which are the CalPERS payment for the UAL and the reclaimed water sales.
No, speak into your mic. I can hardly hear you.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
Turn your mic towards you.
Yeah, it's on. I just gotta
It's
lean
very
into
far away.
it. Okay, well, at least I wasn't leaning back this time.
That's good. You're learning.
Okay, so in regards to the CalPERS payment of the unfunded accrued liability, in my presentation, I mentioned that we paid $834,000 as an additional discretionary payment. That was the payment that was made in 2019, fiscal year 2019, so it was made before June 30th. The budget for 2020 includes a 3-year pay down policy where we'll pay $8 million in 2020, $4 million in 2021, and $4 million in 2022. So this report doesn't encompass any of those 3 payments because we're only talking about what happened as of June 30th, 2019. So hopefully that answers that question. The reclaimed water sales, as I mentioned, that's just as a result of an increase in capital recovery. We've done an assessment of our capital recovery that's included in our charges for reclaimed water sales. And we've now included everything in there. And as a result, the amount being charged to our 2 customers has gone up. And we've collected more money.
Yeah, we've had a lot of negotiations with Livenhain and Carlsbad, our 2 customers, to get that rate up. So.
Okay. And in regards to the other, is there a legal statement to be made? I think not. So thank you, Mr. Hunsaker. Okay, we're moving on to, oh, no. We can move for, yes, sir.
Very quickly, Wes, I just really want to congratulate you for the past year.
Microphone.
You got it. It's on. It's on.
So, congratulations to you and your team for doing a great job last year in keeping the finance committee very well informed with a lot of interesting questions, I'm sure, for you, but you always had the answers. And your reports are magnificent. Thank you very much. And thank Mike and thank Anthony. If you just have Anthony not talk so much in the meetings, they wouldn't go so long. But other than that, been a great job working with you. Thank you.
Yes, Mike.
And as the other member of the finance committee who spent a lot of time with you and your team, and Davis Farr, I think I said it last year when Davis Farr was presented their findings during this meeting, but I've been through 3 different auditing firms now in my time with Vallecito's, and they're by far, I think, the most comprehensive and probably the kind of the easiest to kind of understand what they're looking at, how they do what they do, And so I really appreciate their efforts, and I know a lot of what they're able to accomplish is because of what you guys are doing and giving to them as well. And to echo Director Martin's comments, it's been a pleasure working with you on this entire audit process from the Finance Committee standpoint. Thank you.
I assume that this report will be on our website?
Yes.
So that all of the folks at home can just go in there and study the bejeebers out of it. Okay, both of you.
Thank you. Did you have something to say, Director? I would like to say that not only have you done a wonderful job, as always, and Davis Farr is a wonderful company. I've worked with them on the audit committee at the Water Authority, and they are very thorough and very easy to understand. But I also want to give kudos to the Finance Committee, because I know they made you do your work diligently, and they did ask you a lot of questions, and I appreciate their insight and inquiries. So we have in front of us, we need to consider and accept the 2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
I'll move to approve the report as presented by staff.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
If I may,
Yes,
President Evans,
certainly.
I just want to brag about staff a little bit. I mean, this is a big move to go from a basic financial statement to a CAFR, and I think Wes and Anthony and Janelle have done an awesome job looking at, jumping through all the hoops, the 79-page checklist and all that stuff, and I think it puts us in that best of class, which is good. We're always striving to get into that platinum, whatever rare metal you want to call it, but I think this is another step towards that, so that's all.
Great job, everybody.
Excellent. Excellent job. Okay, we'll be moving on to item 2.4, the Hillside Development Project Update and a Policy Direction.
I'm going to kick that off if you don't mind,
Oh,
President Evans.
whoever would like
So
to.
joining me tonight and going to co-presenters is Rick Giddings. You all know Rick, and Rick was hired as a consultant to assist the district in monetizing an adjacent piece of property. So a while ago, the board put together an ad hoc committee. It's Director Martin and Director Hernandez to look and kind of guide staff through the process of putting some monetary value to the property. One of the steps after we put together the ad hoc committee was to retain the services of Rick Giddings. The original direction of the board was to work with Rick and ultimately to try to get development partners interested. And at that time, it was kind of with minimal risk to the district, minimal cost out of the district's pockets, and minimal impact on resources. So we've met on several occasions, and as the conversations with the ad hoc committee have progressed, this idea came up that the district may be able to better monetize its value if we put a little bit more skin in the game, if we move the project a little further forward. And that's what we're here today to talk about, because I informed the ad hoc committee that I really don't have the authority to do anything different than the full board directed. So we're coming back to the full board to say, are you okay with a course correction? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rick, and he can kind of walk you through what all this means. What are we looking for? How long is it going to take? What's involved, and what does it cost? So with that, Rick, thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. President Evans, Board of Directors, good evening. I don't always wear shorts and blue jeans.
Wait a minute, I didn't.
Take a photo.
Yeah.
Grown-up pants.
Are we going to be?
Big boy pants.
Big boy.
I have them on, right. I just wanted to make sure you saw that. Thank you for taking the time this evening. As the General Manager indicated, we've been working and noodling on this particular site. As you know, it's a 48-acre site, which also includes your headquarters building and your O&M facilities. So the site that we're really talking about is 32.7 acres, according to the appraisal that was done in 2017. And the board did authorize $50,000 initially to begin work on this. The ad hoc committee, myself and your general manager have taken a look at this project. Obviously, I'm glad I'm following Wes, because his job is to account for the revenue. My job is to try to create more revenue for you. So Wes and I are going to become very good friends over this, I hope. And obviously, the goal of the project is to develop an ongoing revenue stream from development of this 32.7 acre site to help defray future costs to your ratepayers. And that is the single most important goal. And we want to work with a development partner who is yet to be selected, although I can tell you that I've talked to a number of developers, and there is definitely interest in this site. There's no question about that. The issue is, how do we move from where we are today to putting our best foot forward for a development partner to come in and pick up the bulk of the burden, which we don't want the district to absorb, in entitling this site. And to that end, a couple of things that we've done. The city, of course, is in a general plan amendment process. They think it's going to take 2 to 3 years. They were kind enough to invite Valicitos to be on the GPAC committee, which I think is critical, not only from a service standpoint, but also to look at this property and potentially others that the district owns, to take advantage of that during that process. This current site is about 95% zoned R310. There is some light industrial on the south side of it, but the vast bulk of it is R310, which allows 12 to 20 units per acre. One of the ideas that we're pursuing is to go through the general plan process with the city. And again, that's a 2 to 3 year process, so this is not going to happen overnight. And amend the site to allow for 100% of multifamily at either an R36, which is a 20 to 30 unit per acre, or, as I'm anticipating, even a higher density, which I believe the city is going to pursue, and they may be forced to pursue that as a part of the state's focus on creating additional housing. So our goal would be to maximize the density of the site, even though we may never build that number of units on the site because of both habitat issues and grading issues, but we certainly want to start the process with the maximum number of units on the site as a potential. So one of the things that we'd like the board to consider tonight is, during the general plan process, the city is going to be looking at sites all over town, and they're going to be doing an EIR that they will adopt as a part of the general plan process. I can assure you that there are a number of property owners within the community that are going to work with the city to amend the general plan that's on their property. In many cases, it will be to a higher residential density. In some cases, it may be to some other use. But there will be a focus on that. The city will undoubtedly request that those property owners do some of the legwork, so that when the city adopts their EIR, some of the basic CEQA documents on those properties are included in the analysis and ultimately in the decision-making by the city council. And I'm just going to run quickly through the principal CEQA documents that typically the city asks for during that process. Traffic, biological, soils, noise, air quality, greenhouse gases, cultural resources, an environmental site assessment, phase 1, which fortunately has already been done here on the property, compliments of the San Marcos Unified School District, and potentially a specific plan, although my initial discussions with the city is that they may not want a specific plan on this property, but we'll continue to discuss that. So the ad hoc committee and the general manager and I have discussed this, and what we are going to suggest to the board is at the appropriate time, and the appropriate time may not be now, it certainly could be during your budget deliberations come June, May or June, to add an additional $100,000 to the project in anticipation of doing a number of those CEQA documents, so that as we're negotiating with a development partner, we can secure a higher value from them, because having that work done eliminates their risks to a certain degree. And I've talked to a number of CEQA consultants, and $100,000 is more than adequate to get most of these studies done. The one that probably we may not need to do right now is a soils report, simply because we are not going to be doing a detailed site development plan, a grading plan, and those engineering documents that are the most expensive part of any project. We are simply looking to get this entitled from a CEQA standpoint with city's EIR, and allow the development partner to carry the heavy load in terms of those other expenses. Again, this is going to be a 2 to 3 year process. I believe that if the board is comfortable in discussing and potentially authorizing this additional $100,000, and again, it does not need to be today, although if you're prepared to do that, that would be fine. It could be during your budget process. I think it will dramatically increase the value when we talk to our development partner. The other two subjects I just want to talk briefly on is there may be the potential that we could get part of that money or all of it grant funded. There's two bills. One is Law SB 2, which provides for grant funding for entitling projects. Unfortunately, that bill talks about local government, and they define that as city and county, or city and county, as in San Francisco. So I don't know that a special district would qualify for that, although I think it's worth pursuing. And then SB 50 is not so much a grant funding bill as a bill that is going to put extreme pressure on cities to produce more affordable housing and housing in general. They are developing a series of incentives for private development, essentially, and we will have a development partner who are prepared to go through the process. And the bill at the current reading expedites the process, really forces the local government, the city in this case, to act more quickly than they typically do. And it provides a number of incentives, such as if you're within a half a mile of a transit facility, which we are. This property is served by 2 Sprinter stations, and literally the nearest bus stop is 150 feet off the site on Mission Road, Route 305. And so some other incentives would be reduced parking standards, as in a half of a parking space per unit. Waiver of a number of CEQA requirements, which would protect the district and development partner in the event someone decided to litigate against the project, and a whole series of incentives to stimulate housing. So a couple of assumptions that the ad hoc committee, your manager and I have assumed is that the district would rather maintain ownership and work with a development partner on a long-term ground lease, similar to what some cities have done, versus an outright sale. And so I'm working on that assumption. And I think the ad hoc committee has also come to the conclusion that spending a little bit more money in this process would probably add a lot of value to the project. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. And if you have none, then for the board to discuss and decide what they would like to do.
Okay, gentlemen,
I have no questions, but I
would you like to make a comment or talk about it?
would make a comment.
Yes,
We
okay.
couldn't have found a better person to do the lead on this for us. He knows it inside and out, and he just proved by his explanation so eloquently stated as to exactly where we're at with this. So it'd be my opinion that we continue moving forward on it, based upon looking at the general manager and saying, have you sandbagged $100,000 in enough places? I know you have at least 1 or 2.
Yeah, we can certainly find the money. I just need the board approval to go ahead and put more money towards this project.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I do concur. This opportunity is just getting better and better, and for our ratepayers. And I would urge that we do all of these studies. The one that potentially Mr. Gettings suggested might not be appropriate at this time is the soils report. I would disagree with that in that that is one of the key concerns that developers have is, okay, you got this big mountain there. Am I going to be able to dig this out with a spoon, or am I going to have to blow it up? If with a soils report, that would solve all those questions. It'll tell the developer ultimately what kind of borings are there, what kind of rock may be there, what kind of equipment he needs to remove the rock, whether or not he needs to blast the rock. So I would encourage the consultant and the board to include all of the CEQA requirements, and it's just going to give our development ultimate partner a better view of what he's stepping into, which will give us a better value.
Thank you. I would like to point out that you two on the ad hoc committee, I appreciate your recommendations since you've been working so hard on this. Do you have a comment or question on it, Director Sinella?
I did, and thank you, Rick, for the great presentation. I've been excited about this project since day one, and I'm even more excited tonight after hearing what Rick had to present to us. I guess just a kind of a question about the soils report. I'm certainly supportive of it if it makes sense to, if it needs to be done now, or maybe it makes sense that, it sounds like you said this is going to be a 2 or 3 year process.
Correct.
I'm not a developer. I don't know when a soils report is best conducted, but I also remember though that the school district recently did a soils report on this property when they were looking and considering it as a school site option. Is there any chance that we could get that from them?
They did, it really isn't a soils report what they did. They did a environmental assessment of the site. Some of that was some soils work, but it certainly wasn't to the point that would satisfy a developer as to what soil. They talked about the soil conditions, they talked about what's out there, but they didn't do any borings, they didn't do any of that. The good news, though, from that report, which was done by Tetra Tech, was that there was really no recognizable environmental hazards on the site whatsoever. The only 2 points they brought up was, one, there's a high-pressure water line, which is either yours or San Diego County Water Authority, within 1,500 feet of the site, and there's a high-pressure gas line, which is SDG&E's, which runs in Mission Road. Okay. And those were the only two environmental concerns they expressed.
Okay. So I would just close my comments with thank you, and I'm fully supportive of moving on. If it makes best sense with all the committees and the consultants' recommendation to do the soil report now versus waiting, I'm supportive of it, but I'm also supportive of, if it makes better sense to wait, I'm good with that too.
Thank you. And Director Martin?
I have a question. The reason for postponing the soils report is just because we don't need it right now, or how much is that?
Well, I just reviewed a soils report for a similar sized property, which sort of shocked me because it was only $8,300.
Oh.
So that surprised me, to be honest with you, because usually soils report are fairly expensive. And when I say all of these reports, part of this process is going to be asking the city, what do you think you need to re-entitle this as R36 or some other higher density project? And I'm sure some of these will be required. Usually for a CEQA document, soils is not a requirement. Okay. It is a follow-on requirement, certainly, but usually not for the CEQA process.
Okay.
Yes.
I recommend we go along with our consultant schedule. He's what we're relying on.
Okay. Do you have anything to say, Director Ellithorpe?
No.
Okay, thank you. It was a great report. It was very succinct. You made some very wonderful points. I think the consensus is we'd like to move forward as directed.
Good.
And follow our consultant's plan of attack. So, thank you very much.
I think the most impressive thing is he knew the number of the bus line that ran right along Mission. That's pretty good. When you know the number of the bus line that runs along the property,
He
that's,
uses it when he wears shorts.
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, he knew exactly how many feet away it was.
Yeah.
How would we know that was critical?
And I agree with the comments that Rick is the right guy. He's really been helpful for us.
Yeah. Okay. So, moving on to, that's the end of action items. We'll move on to reports, and the first one is our general manager.
There was one item that was
wait.
added. I don't know
I
if
missed, oh, I maybe didn't
I don't know if
get
the cheat
that.
sheet you have.
Sorry.
It's item 2.5, if I may.
2.5, and go right ahead, I
Yeah.
don't have it on this agenda.
So at the workshop on Monday, we had a discussion about the potential rate adjustments coming up, and as part of that presentation, we talked about a 218 notice, and we received several comments from the board, and at the meeting, we said we would put an item on tonight's special meeting. We had only a 24-hour noticing requirement, so we were able to do so. So that's what's agendized tonight. So if I'm going to call Wes and Mike to come up and sit at the staff table to help me through this. What you're going to see is very similar to what we recommended before, so I'll call it the Viacitos model, but we made adjustments. I call it the Viacitos model because it's very similar to what we used in the past and our customers are very comfortable with, but I think the board made some really excellent comments, and hopefully what you see tonight will show that we listened and we heard you. One of the key things was the board said, hey, we should put in that comparison chart. How do our rates compare to our neighbors? So you'll see that. We have two alternatives. I'm gonna pass these out. So this is option, you'll see in the upper left corner, there's something that says A. You each get one of those. And this one, cleverly enough, is titled B. You each get one of those. The only real difference is the location of the placement of the comparison chart. Do you want it embedded on page 2, or do you want it on the back of the fold on page 4, we'll call it? All the other information, I'll look to Mike and Wes on this, I think all the other information is the same between the two examples. So we are looking for feedback. Do you like A or do you like B? Some of the other things we included, there were some comments to say, hey, we should reflect the cost of imported water. So we need to stress that. We did. We took out the references to wastewater rate increases. We did that as well. And maybe either Wes or Mike, if you can point out some of the other changes we made for the board's benefit.
So we tried to address all the director's suggestions, including such things as Director Snell had said he'd like to see the wholesale costs were related to the increase in supply costs from the Colorado River in Northern California. We've incorporated that. Other suggestions, I think GM Pruitt mentioned that the chart's there now. We've added more language, tried to make it more clear at the beginning of the Prop 218 that, you know, you're getting this because your rates may go up 3.5%. So we basically tried to incorporate all of your suggested changes. And hopefully, with the two options, you can let us know which one you prefer, because they had the same content except for the location of the chart.
I do want to put a caveat on one thing, and I thought it was a great recommendation by the board to include the comparison chart, how our costs compare. Our attorneys did say, they did caution, they say, be careful when you do that, because now you're including information that you don't have control over. So we run the risk of some other agency saying, you miscalculated our rates. We changed our rates in the middle of your Prop 218 and you didn't reflect that. I don't think those are necessarily legal considerations, but we may get feedback from other agencies that say we misrepresented their information. So maybe I'll ask Mr. Gilpin if he has any legal concerns about the inclusion of the comparison cost chart.
But you did put a disclaimer on the bottom of it, based on data gathered December 10th.
Right. We feel we've covered it with that disclaimer, but...
Yeah, that was our suggestion, to add the disclaimer to the bottom of the chart, so.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. Director
I said to
Ellenberg.
put an asterisk with a full page disclaimer, but that was fine.
I've got a question. It's a dumb one.
Yes.
I don't see any difference between the two.
Excuse me, one moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. Wait, till they're done.
Well, I've got an A and a B, but they look identical.
Me too.
Do we have the presentation that shows the two?
That's what we're trying to pull up now.
Okay.
So it's either A or A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your choice.
Any color you want to talk
So you guys are recommending A, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you got a choice, go with A or go with A.
Should definitely go with B.
Yeah, I believe the agenda packet has both.
All right.
Just the presentation is.
Give me your Bs, please.
A B.
That's all right.
Give you a B.
The only difference is the comparison appears on the mailing page, the last page,
Right.
instead of on the second page.
Here's your revised B.
Yeah, get rid of B and take the revision.
Okay, after we have a chance to look at that, are there any
There we go. Now we're-
further comments?
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I like the A better. Oh, yeah.
Yes, Director Sarella.
Hey, Wes, you'd mentioned the language regarding the wholesale water. I thought what I had recommended is that we use the Otay Water District language and, remove wholesale water and put in essentially is an increased cost of providing water from Colorado River and Northern California. Maybe we could even put in the desalination plant, but kind of spell it out like, because I don't think our average customer understands the wholesale component to water.
So, sorry to interrupt, but the language actually, what it says is that resulted in increased cost to the water authority, who is our wholesaler, and they've raised their rates by 5. So I thought that would kind of clarify it. I don't know if you'd like to change the language further, we can, but, so.
I can only tell you just from a public outreach standpoint, and when I'm out and about and I get invited occasionally to go speak to a group of people, where I really get a lot of nods and understanding of what I'm trying to convey to them is when I start talking about how the Colorado River water is coming from 250 miles away, and Northern California is coming from 400 plus miles away, and desalination is close, but it's expensive because of electricity and da-da-da. They can kind of understand that because they can visualize it. They can understand, most people who live in San Diego know how far away the river is, and they can go, wow, that water is coming from quite a distance, right? And so I don't know how we capture that in R218, but I did like how Otay Water District did in the example that you provided us last time.
And so just to know also, we did discuss that wasn't a proper 218 notice that we were looking at in the last meeting. I found Otay's Prop 218 notice. They have 3 pages for each different service they have, and the total is 22 pages for their Prop 218 notice.
Yeah, I forwarded that to the board today, but.
So it's.
Yeah, the point's well taken, Director Sinella, and if that's a minor adjustment you want us to make, to really clarify, don't use generic terms like wholesale water agency, because it may not mean much. Yeah. That's fine. We can say that where the sources are, not who gets them for us.
So I think the language I'm referring to is on page 2, where it says what a water rates fund. And I don't know if we can read this. It says the proposed rate increases cover rising costs of acquiring imported water from the Colorado River and Northern California, which result in wholesale water cost increases from our wholesaler, the San Diego County Water Authority. And then it talks about their rate increases.
See, that paragraph is similar to what they had there, and I like it a lot. But I think it should be, the first half of the first page talks about why they're getting this notice and how it's going to impact them, right? And so I think since there is some room on the second part of the first page, we should go, since we've already told them that they're going to have an impact, then go right into explaining why they have that impact.
Yep.
And it does say why a rate increase is necessary. I'd just like to see that paragraph on the front page, right after your rates are going to go up 3.5%, and then this is why, because we're bringing water from these locations.
So you think it'd be okay to move this whole section to the first page of the Prop 218?
1 out of 5, I like it.
Okay.
Well,
Director Hernandez, please.
If you just took out, repeated the sentence, the proposed rate increase covers rising costs for acquiring imported water from the Colorado River in Northern California, which result in the wholesale water cost increases from our wholesaler, San Diego County Water Authority, period. Take that full sentence
Okay with that.
and put it where the cost of water, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that way we only need to add the sentence as opposed to that whole paragraph.
Yeah, Director
Okay.
Hernandez, are you suggesting we repeat that sentence in
Yes.
2 locations?
2 locations.
So copy it and put it.
Copy it and put it on the front, why our rate's increasing, and putting that full sentence in there right after or right where it belongs in share of the cost of water, the increased cost of wholesale water. Slide it in that location.
Does that sound clear to anyone?
Yes, we can easily do that.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Director Martin.
Is there a way to flip the chart? So instead of us being green on top of the chart, we're green on the bottom of the chart, meaning we're the least expensive. The top one being the most expensive. We work our way down, that makes more sense.
So you'd rather have it where, like Rincon, just flip those? Where
Yeah,
Rincon
Rincon on top, yeah.
Lakeside at the bottom.
And Lakeside on the bottom, so we show how close we are to the bottom. And we don't need two in there, but we just put the one green line for proposed. Why do you have two lines?
We're just trying to demonstrate to the public that we're pretty good, and even if these increases, we're not getting any, we're still at the same ranking. That's what we were trying to convey.
Okay.
I-
But to reverse the order, I would think.
I was going to say, I agree with putting it in reverse order so we are at the bottom. I was going to see either suggest that or you turn it upright so I think that'll point out much more.
Okay.
Anyone else have a comment?
What about the placement of the chart itself? On page 2,
Oh.
page 4?
Page 2.
I don't know, page 4 they're gonna see, because it's folded,
So it comes in like this, right?
it's folded like this.
Right.
So they're gonna see that right away, before they open it. It was on the back page.
And that's a good thing.
I think so. Right away, they go, oh, what's this, what are we comparing here? You know,
We're just looking for direction. We don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but
Yes,
Well, that's very
Mr.
unusual,
Hernandez.
isn't it?
Mr.
I personally, I agree that we should flip the chart, but I like it on the second page because, you're reading the information and flip it over and go, oh, there we are. It better context, if you will, as opposed to standalone at the back, my opinion.
Yes, Dr. Ellisart.
I agree with that. I'd rather have it in the body of the discussion.
The body of the discussion. And I was going to say, I like it on the back, but only if the opening line on the back was really big that says, your water district, Vallecita's, places in the lowest third. Like, did you know? So already they get a little bit of information. If it's just this, but that would, people look at those little did you know things. Otherwise, I agree it should be in the body, and I also don't know where you would do this, but I think how to provide comments or protest should really be if it's not on the back page, it should be on the end somewhere. I don't think we should tell them, we're going to have a rate, and the first thing we do is tell you how to protest it. I think you should give them all the information. Is there a reason?
So the copy, I think it's copy B. A has the chart on the back. Copy B should have the protest language on the back. So if you like it on the back, that would be the copy B. So.
I'm saying if you use, could there be a copy C? Can you take how to provide comments and change its placement,
Well, we have a version that's on the back of the,
but not put it on the back?
oh, you don't want it on the back?
I'm saying, I kind of like this in the back. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
It really doesn't matter. I'm just saying, I like this on the back if it has more than just this blunt thing. I think people will read it. But if they open on the second page, I think that the first paragraph, this should either be down at the bottom or switched somewhere else because it's.
Could you flip-flop the paragraphs?
Flip-flop, on the 2 pages, not the back. Otherwise, it's really up to you guys.
I'm going to call for a
Direction is-
vote, if I have that
Call
right.
for a vote.
On A or B? Do you want it on the back or on page 2?
Raise your hand if you'd like it to be on, inside, that's the B,
Page
the B in front of it, no.
Page
Just
2.
A, copy A.
A is.
A, and B is on the back.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, and the reason why I like it on the back is I think we're giving people way too much credit. I think most people get this in the mail, they look at it and go, oh yeah, okay, we're low. I don't think they read a lot of it.
Yes, Director Snell, sorry.
I like the back. I mean, I like Director Evans. I don't have strong feelings, so it doesn't matter that much, but of the two, I like the back. However, with the caveat, I think Director Evans has a great idea that we need to have a little bolded, maybe in red, just kind of a, like, did you know, or some sort of attention grabber, right? Whatever that might be, maybe our marketing team can take a look at that and see what they can come up with something kind of, you know.
So it's 2 to 2.
It's, and I would vote for on the back.
Okay, so I hear 3-2 for the back. We will make some adjustments, make it more interesting, intriguing, and we'll try to add some clarification language.
Okay.
And that's
what
it?
oh, yes, excuse.
Well, to Director Evans' point, I thought she had a good point too, within this page, just take the bottom 3 paragraphs, move them up, and then.
Yeah, consider it done.
Yep.
All right, and so it's 3-2 in the directions, and then I would certainly hope the board would agree that we don't need this to come back to us again. We're going to trust the staff to take care of it. Thank you for
So
listening.
It will come back, but it won't come back
I
to
know,
you
I
for
mean not come
style.
back for
Yeah.
another review.
Yeah, I wouldn't put anybody through that again.
Please
So-
don't, it's really minutia that we shouldn't spend time on.
It'll come back, so let's talk a little bit about timing. Our goal originally was to come back on next week, December 18th, to start a process with the ultimate goal of implementing the rates March 1st. It's a tight timeline. If we switch it to
January 8th or 9th.
January 8th or 9th, we can still have the rates implemented March 1st. So it may or may not come forward on the 18th. We have to check with our legal people and our rate consultant to make sure everything's done. If it's not, don't panic, and I'll keep you posted. It'll go on the beginning of the year, and with the 45-day notice, we can still have them effective by March 1st, which is what our target was last time we talked about that. So.
Yes, Director Sinella.
That's fine, but I won't be here for the first meeting in January. I'll be in Florida. So I don't know if that matters, but.
Maybe we can talk about that a little. The first regular meeting would be January 1st. We're obviously not going to have it on January 1st. So the second Wednesday would be the 8th. I won't be in town either. I'll be back on the 9th. I don't believe we can go much beyond the 9th and still have rates implemented March 1st.
You'll still be, excuse me.
I'm home on the 11th, which is a Saturday.
Oh, you're home on the
so-
11th.
Which is
Thank
a
you.
Saturday, so really the 13th.
All right, and Dr.
The
Martin?
29th.
Well, if
Yes, Director Hernandez?
if you're not here, is that gonna?
Yeah,
I mean,
does it have
we
to
all
be
know what we're
unanimous?
gonna do, it really just.
No, it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
unanimous.
Then I would suggest that we have our meeting on the 9th.
Yeah.
Is that, and then we move forward. That
I
makes the
wouldn't-
deadline.
We will hopefully have all 5 directors in attendance when we actually conduct the Prop 218 public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
That's an important one, so.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the date of that one.
February 19th, right now.
February 18th?
19th.
February 19th would be the third Wednesday in February, which would be a regular meeting date, and we'd also assign it to be the public hearing unless we want to do it on a special date for the public's benefit.
So we've said January 9th is an official meeting?
That's what I was
I'm trying to
gonna,
figure out my schedule.
Gotcha, okay.
Figure out everybody else's
Yeah.
days off, vacations.
If the board would like the general manager in attendance, it can't be on the 8th. I will be here the 9th, and that works for me. So if it works for the rest of the board, absent Director Sinella, we will look at that.
Okay.
I think it works.
Especially
Okay.
grumpy tonight.
So next meeting, let me clarify. Yes, Wes?
So if I could make one additional comment. So
Wait
RAF,
till they're done talking. Okay, yes, sir.
so our consultants and our attorneys are reviewing the Prop 218 currently. We're going through the numbers. Some of the numbers on the Prop 218 may change, but they won't be any higher than what you've currently received or you've received in the past. I just want to give you a heads up on that, so if we bring it to the 18th meeting, some of those numbers may be a little bit different as far as it might be a 3.5, 3.4.
It may be lower.
But they won't be any higher. I just want to let you know.
Understood?
So let me explain why.
Wait.
You're talking about for the second year? I thought we were only doing 1 year,
No, no,
2
no.
point something.
First year,
No.
1 year, it's a 1-year rate increase. What we're saying, so if you remember from the workshop, we have volumetric or commodity rates, and then we have ready-to-serve charge.
Right.
What we talked about last time is everything would go up 3.5%. After that meeting, we went back and checked and verified what was approved in the budget process, and all this is predicated on our budget, and in the budget, we only did the 3.5% on the commodity. The only ready-to-serve we increased was the 5/8 inch meter to make it the same price as the 3/4 inch meter, and that was about a 3.4% increase. In the budget, none of the other ready-to-serve charges went up in the first year. So what Wes is saying is we come back with a Prop 218 notice, it'll have the 3.5% on the volume, on the per unit rate, but the chart that showed the ready-to-serve will only show an increase on the 5/8 inch meter of 3.4%, maybe 3.5, and all the others will stay the exact same. It's all better for the customers, and it's consistent with the budget approvals that our board has done.
Did this happen since our meeting?
It did. So at the workshop.
This is the first we're hearing about it.
That's right. And that's why we're telling you about it, to make sure you hear about it.
I'm glad you brought it up now, but I thought it was a lot less than that. I thought we were looking at, if you take away the sewer, which doesn't mean anything, it does to you guys, it makes it more palatable. I thought we were looking at a lot less of an increase.
Well, let's talk about that. And that's why when we first gave you those numbers, and it was an effective 2.49% increase, because we were saying sewer is zero. The board has asked us to remove all references to wastewater increases on this, so we can't balance those out and bring down that rate. So if we're only talking about water, it's 3.5% on the commodity. If you want us to include the wastewater, then we can show a lower percentage. The dollar increase is the same. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But the percentage goes down when you say the sewer is zero. So we can't have it both ways. If you don't want to reference wastewater, then it's a 3.5% increase. So happy either way, but the direction was pretty clear last time, make it just about water.
Okay, we remain without water? I mean, yes, without wastewater. Thank you. Okay, moving on now to general reports, and General Manager, are you ready?
Yes, I am. I was going to make a comment about today's City of San Marcos event, but I'm sure some of you will comment on that, so I won't. The only thing I wanted to point out is we do have some night work scheduled tonight. It's on Distribution Street, I think it is, a couple blocks east of Urge. We're just doing some night work because we're replacing a water valve, and it's going to put some businesses out of water, so they requested we do night work. So if you hear anything about work going on overnight, it's us, and it's planned. That's it.
All right, legal?
I'll just briefly comment. Last meeting, SB 330 was brought up during public comment. We did look at that. We contacted the state. The concern was what effect that might have on our capacity fees that are going to go into effect January 2nd. In reviewing the ordinance, in reviewing the new law and the ordinance, there's a lot of, as you can imagine, issues relative to interpretations, but what's clear is that we adopted the ordinance prior to the effective date of this, so it doesn't apply to those rates. In addition, the way this is going to work is people are going to have to submit preliminary applications to the permitting agencies for their developments. And the preliminary applications are defined by the statute, so that's not a development with a pending application. They're going to have to submit a new preliminary application to trigger this. And so our rates that are going into effect January 2nd are fine and will apply, because on January 1st, no one can get in and submit a preliminary application. So we've worked with staff and the general manager on that issue. It's clarified. We can talk next time about what effects this may have in the future in terms of our rates. It won't affect our automatic increases, et cetera. It could affect future projects that have a preliminary application. They would be tethered, if you will, to whatever the existing rates are under the ordinance. So.
That it?
So that's clear as mud, but thanks.
Very clear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Gilpin. The San Diego Water Authority went dark in December. However, we're having a special board meeting. It's a closed session regarding litigation, and it's a all-day function starting at 9 a.m. with an open-ended closing. It will definitely be an interesting discussion, but it is a closed session. So I have nothing more to report. And the next would be Encina Wastewater Capital Improvement Committee.
Yes, a busy week. We approved the projects of capital improvements, which is the wall that is deteriorating, took care of that. We bought a pneumatic forklift, and the I was going to do so well. Supervisorial control and data acquisition contract. SCADA. I know, it's easier. I've been trying to do better, though. We proved that today. And then, as the president, I received a lovely placard resolution from the Senate of this fine state telling them how identifying to the public how wonderful I am. And so I'm going to take that home to my family and put it right on the kitchen table.
Think it will help?
That's not going to do a thing, but it'll keep the napkins in order.
Perfect.
And that was my portion of Encino.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. And now it's Policy and Finance. That would be Director Ellithorpe.
No, it would.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Must be Director Martin. A year ago, but I'm sure it's new news, so we'll let Director Martin
We
report.
spent one of our longest meetings of the year because we were going through the audit and adopting the audit. It was very good. We have a couple of people there that ask an awful lot of questions, and it's always the smallest tiger that roars the loudest. But we accepted the audit, and it was also accepted today at the board meeting, to which Mr. Hernandez did an excellent job as his last board meeting, or his last board meeting as president, for another few years. That's what we did.
Thank you for that report. Standing committees. Yes, Director Hernandez?
Well, I was at the groundbreaking of the bridges and the development of the Creek Walk.
Is this a standing committee?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all
No,
right.
it's not. I've jumped ahead.
It's a confusing
I was
night,
trying to move
no.
us along.
So does any, if you would let me know.
We didn't have an engineering committee.
Yeah.
Someone
Water.
for the big black.
Yes, Director Sinella.
I can't remember if I've already reported out on this or not, but the last finance committee meeting, we talked about the cost of service study and some of the rate stuff that you guys went through the presentation just a few days ago, so I'm not going to bore you. Basically the same thing.
Thank you. Any other standing committees reports? No. So now we will go to the director's reports on meeting, conferences, and seminars. And Jim, you will have to wait and be last.
That's, my.
No, I'm so sorry. Mr. Hernandez, Director Hernandez.
Yes, the groundbreaking for the bridges, which Mark Loescher, former city councilman, and I and Hal were on the first committee 30-plus years ago, and boy, things move at lightning speed. And they say it's going to be a 2-year project, and it's going to be a 20 or 30-year program to do everything they want to do. That was the meeting there. I attended Aqua, and the two meetings that really caught my eye were the Region 10. They had a panel about water, and what was brought up was very interesting. I don't know if I've been living under a rock, because the first of PFOA, the first I heard about that was the last conference before. And apparently this has been going on for decades. And the movie Dark Water, which was referenced at the meeting, goes through all that. So I immediately went out and saw the movie, and I'm leaving the theater, and the two elderly people in front of me said, "We got to call the water district." So I went, oh my goodness. I recommend everyone see the movie, because it's a good movie, and it certainly goes through the whole PFOA and PFOS program. I did my sexual harassment, and I'm booking myself into the county jail immediately, because there's just no way to get through this.
Prevention, right?
Yeah, prevention, yeah. And that was my portions.
Director Sinella?
I also attended Aqua, and a couple of highlights. I saw a panel discussion by Citrus Heights Water District on what they're calling their Project 2030 Water Main Replacement Study, public engagement, and their CAC workshops. And really, the two big takeaways for me were they had a panel of all of their staff members, and they had one board member on there. The different ideas that they had to do the public outreach, because this is obviously going to be a massive project, a very expensive project, a very long-term project. And they really went above and beyond with their community outreach to discuss what they were doing and what they wanted to do and what they needed to do. A lot of the ideas, there's only so much you can do with public outreach, so a lot of it was similar to what we do, but there was a couple kind of, basically the big takeaway was that you can't do too much of it, and that they had, there's a calendar here on my little handout if you're interested, but they had probably 10 different workshops as they went through that process. They also kind of because this is such a massive project for them, they also had workshops not just about what needed to be done, but how they were going to fund it and finding that right balance between ratepayer rate increases to fund this project versus going out for debt. So that was kind of an interesting conversation about that. And then on the second day, Glenn and I were kind of hanging out together, and then we decided to divide and conquer. I know he went to a solar presentation because that's timely for us. I actually saw one that kind of piqued my interest, and I went to at the same time that was around communications again in HR, and it was titled "Working Together to Successfully Recruit Gen Z into the Water Industry." And Gen Z is those folks that are early 20s, kind of wrapping up college right about now, and water's not always, water service, wastewater industry is not always the top of mind for kids going to school these days, but they had a couple of panels with a couple different water districts. One of them was local here, I think it was Helix, if I remember correctly. And what they're doing, they do kind of what we're doing in the sense that they're trying to get into the high schools and get into kind of catch the kids before they even go to college. But they've actually, some of them have created an actual kind of water academy and these were for districts that were like out in the middle of the desert along the Met line and stuff. So they really just tried to get them almost a bit of a certification before they even go into college in water. So it really tried to grab them, and they've had some successes with it. So there were some other things, but I feel like I've talked forever. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Director Martin?
I was also at the Aqua Conference. I'll try and report on something other than what they did. I was at the GPIA with Andy Sells. Andy is a great CEO. He gives a lot of information. He gave it twice, once during his program on his day, and then once again at the closing he did a brief synopsis. But it was very interesting because one of the insurance companies that we use, they call it, it's an add-on, it's like Lloyd's of London, and he was explaining how worldwide events affect us in our insurance policy. The hurricanes affect us. Huh?
That was interesting.
Yeah, hurricanes affect us. The floods and hurricanes and fires in Africa affect us. Everything affects. It's a global economy, and when there's a hurting in the insurance industry, it affects everyone. So they passed out kudos to those people that didn't have any claims, and of course we weren't either of those. We were one. I think work comp we came in low on, but the other two we were above where we should have been, which is unusual for us for whatever reason. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you. Do you have any committees or reports?
Yeah,
Dr. Olcott?
unfortunately, I couldn't attend the Aqua Conference last week. I was up in Sacramento attending CASA Board of Directors annual strategic planning retreat. So in beautiful downtown Sacramento. So,
Well, I congratulate you for being on the board of CASA,
yeah,
and
it's
that
been,
was,
it's been interesting. I got on the board a little over a year ago. The one thing I've found, it's an extremely well-run, efficient organization. One of the big things that's happened recently is that Bobby Larson, the executive director, has retired, and we've selected her replacement from within the organization.
well, excellent. Well, thank you. Well, I was at Aqua as well. Rather than talk about the ones that you've been on, I had sort of a potpourri of impacts, and one of the ones I'll talk about is, it was not the most exciting luncheon presentation. It was a Carrie Talbot, who's with the, I'm going to lose my thoughts right here, the Initiative Response Operators on research on atmospheric rivers, and I was so amazed that he went into such heavy details about the rivers and why they were important. And the most important thing that has happened is that the Army Corps of Engineers has allowed in there them to actually research this. It was never allowed to be researched. So now they have directions to research it, and they feel they have 5 years of research that they can now use, which will help in water management, because this is the first time the rules have been changed, that water management systems can actually, for our reservoirs, can actually use this data they've been collecting for predictions. Before, it was just a process of you kind of moment to moment. So that was really interesting. And I was amazed that I had never thought with reservoirs about some are closed, some are open, some you're fighting, it's upstream water, and another one it's downstream flow in the whole flood control thing, which I found was very interesting. I also was at the Region 10 meeting, and I wanted to say that Region 10 has won 2 awards this year as the region for their involvement in Aqua and the things they presented, which is unusual to have 2 in 1. So that was exciting, and I think that was it. Okay, so we're adjourned.
No, the bottom part.
Oh, I don't have the right agenda, do I?
I had something else.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Yeah, new business. Cal DeSal is having a 2-day event coming up, and I haven't seen it on our docket, but I got an email on it. And regarding that's not important. That's the only thing. Cal DeSal's got a 2-day thing coming up, and I just got an email, so I don't know enough about it, but they're very keen on the keynote speakers, and it's not far away from what I remember. But maybe you could look it up and see what it is.
Yes, and
And
Director Hernandez.
likewise, Water Reuse has a conference coming up relatively soon, so I'd like us to look into that as well.
That's not,
I think that one's on there.
that one's on the travel,
Oh, is it?
the travel list. I don't believe the detail.
Oh, I'm supposed to read all this stuff?
Water Reuse, yeah.
Not necessarily, but it's
Only if you
helpful.
care.
That's got,
In March. The
I only
last
got
one.
here.
The last one on the first page, March. Water Reuse.
Last month?
Sample Beacon.
San Francisco.
Okay,
Oh,
so
there you go.
what's at the end of the agenda? I
Oh,
don't have
yeah,
that. It's, we need to go to the Finance Corporation, is that correct, or have I missing?
If you're done with other business, we need to.
Now,
We need to
are-
close this meeting
Yeah.
and then open the
Okay.
Finance Corporation.
All right, so then close it, adjourned.